Hey everybody, my name is Latard, content creator over on Twitch, and I mainly stream Star Citizen. But recently, like many of us, we've been looking for other things to play while things get better. Today we are doing another react on Inside Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 Social Behavior. As usual, I don't watch these before I react to them to be a little bit more genuine with you all. I'm not a very social person. Me doing this is actually very atypical for me. But today we're talking about social behavior, something I'm terrible at. So I'm very curious. Let's see what it's about. And with that, let's switch on over to the video. Oh, and also, in case you're wondering why Mario hat, well, because I forgot to turn off the redeem before I did my react, and here I am. With that, on to the react.
There's a lot you can say about the upcoming Pyro system. It's dangerous, obviously. It's lawless, certainly. But it's not all just chaos and carnage completely. It's also people just trying to make their living where they can in a place that's challenging and pretty different from the adjacent Stanton system. From repairing your neighbor's generator to supporting the nearby farmers, there's much you can do to be a social and upstanding citizen for Pyro's prosperity.
Okay, so essentially, I think this is just going to be a bit more about the dynamic around Pyro, the different things we're going to be able to do. They'll probably talk about NPC interactions, which we should take with a giant grain of salt and probably not go in with too many expectations on NPCs until server meshing is ironed out and working correctly. So let's keep going.
So the planets of Pyro are different from Stanton in the fact that they all have to deal with the Pyro star system being at the end of its life cycle, emitting huge amounts of solar flare radiation, and we have to consider, like, what is that actually doing to each planet? Naturally, Pyro 1, closest to the sun, is going to be the heaviest influence of the solar flare firing off. So how do those people live? But the people furthest away from the star on Pyro 6 are going to have the least amount of radiation, but it's also going to be super cold at the same time. How do those people live instead?
In Stanton, you have huge landing zones, which are very protected, very safe, lots of security. In Pyro, there's no such thing. You're very exposed to the danger. Everything is a lot more.
So essentially, it's just going to be like going to Brio's all the time. Like, there's no cover. NPCs probably spawning around you all the time. Players waiting to take your stuff. Yeah.
Spread out. People aren't huddled into landing zones. They have the entirety of the system to roam across.
There are no central sources of power in the Pyro star system. It's all decentralized, and each outpost has its own different identity and what it means for you as a player as you go to these different places. Should you be aligned with one faction, you can visit these locations. Should you align with another faction, you can go to these other locations instead.
You've got a lot more to do there. So instead of going down, doing a mission.
We're not going to comment on the face paint, but this looks kind of cool. I am liking some of these armor pieces we're seeing different stuff, not constantly spacesuits. It's kind of cool. But how are they breathing on these planets?
Flying away again, you can go down, do a mission, do another mission, do a third mission, and then go to another outpost on the same planet, do some missions there. You have a much more involved experience.
So let's look.
But yeah, so far this all looks crazy cool. Not gonna lie, I'm very excited to go test out Pyro, but I'm still not 100% sure on what we're trying to talk about here.
Look at some of the places you'll be visiting. So farmsteads are a small slice of life within the Pyro star system to get you introduced to what it's like to live there.
Landing complete.
There are places to gather harvestables, places to complete your missions.
That guy was locked in a cage. Is that like the beginning of Bounty Hunting V2?
And ultimately, your first introduction to how people live in the Pyro star system.
Farms are probably one of my favorite ones, just because I really like the vibe of them.
is the closest thing to a home feeling I think you'll find in Pyro. You feel like there's a smaller community living here.
There's a lot more fields of crops, there's a lot more greenhouses. For the lawless ones, we've got these like grub farm greenhouses, which are really cool as well. They tend to be in a lot more open, plain-like areas, big fields of crops around them.
There is things to do, there's things to harvest, but it's also just the vegetation that kind of sits on a
Cool, so farming simulator in space, coming when? Hey, what's up, Juggernaut? Oh, but yeah, farming simulator in space, yeah, kind of cool. I mean, I am curious to see what these places look like, but I'm actually more curious in terms of what kind of gameplay it's going to create. Like, are we going to have a lot of contracts to come to these places, pick up, you know, farming supplies, or bring them farming supplies, or pick up food and ferry it out into the verse? That could be kind of cool.
A lot of the desolate landscapes that we have in Pyro give you a little bit of this mini feeling of like a little oasis.
There's one in particular on Pyro 2 that's really nice and has this really nice vibe, that kind of like lazy windmill circling in the breeze on a plain that's just like almost featureless apart from these few buildings on it. That really gives, especially at sunset, like really gives an amazing vibe of like, these people live in the ass end of nowhere, but are really trying to do their best to survive.
There are going to be some goods that are only grown in Pyro because of its unique star system that can be shipped back to Stanton.
We have a whole bunch of new mission types that you'll be able to do there. Then they're more geared around repairing pieces of machinery. We have what we call charge drain technology coming over from Squadron, which enables you to transfer an electrical charge from one component to another. So you can like jumpstart a generator, for example. There's scope for much more gathering type of missions, like going out into the field, collecting crops.
Okay, that's actually kind of cool, but at the same time a little ridiculous. You're gonna have these guys in these massive space armors collecting fruit and vegetables in a field. I'm all for it. And what it sounds like is they're trying to create loops within zones. So like you'll do some repair stuff, you'll pick up some fruit or crops, whatever, you'll, bring that out. And then maybe at the end you put that all up on your ship and you go take it somewhere to be sold for them. That would actually kind of be cool, and not creating all these scenarios where you're constantly jumping back and forth between all these points. Give you a little bit more time to appreciate an area before you move on to the next. I'm all for that.
There's a big focus on non-combat at a place like a farm.
Next, let's talk about scrapyards. The scrapyards are one of the few locations within the Pyro star system where you can actually service your ship that is not on space stations or LEOs.
We'll have more scrap in a scrapyard, which makes a lot of sense, but we've got the towering cranes with derelict spaceships in there, the skeletons of spaceships being pulled apart.
And we can see that there is a certain order to things where things get disassembled and moved around, and where your aircrafts are getting refueled and repaired. There will be little shops as well to kind of get you on the way for your journey.
And we've got these large landing pits in all the scrapyards that are unique to the scrapyards, which are the big sort of sunken pits for repairing, rearming, refueling. They kind of bring that kind of unique, okay, this is a scrapyard because I know that there's a landing pit here, and they're the only types of outposts that have those.
Okay, that looks freaking awesome. Then yes, of course, super major Tatooine vibes. Where's Jabba? Is he gonna walk out of one of these doorways?
Here, you're able to interact with Crasher services, refuel your ship, repair your ship, even rearm your ship as well. In addition to servicing your ship, you can also service the scrapyard itself. You've got to use your charge and drain tools to be able to repair pipes, repair canisters, any faults in machinery, etc.
It's very much about taking things apart and organizing them and shipping them off again.
But unlike the landing zones within the Stanton system, there is no air traffic controller. There is nobody to filter out where you can go. You simply choose a parking space, you land there, you service your ship, and you must fly out.
The new mission type that we have is salvaging, but in first person. So you don't need to be in a ship. It will be something that you can do on foot. So salvaging all the various panels which have turned up at the scrapyards in order to process them.
That's actually super cool, and that'll be great for zero to hero runs where you can just be like, can somebody give me a ride to the scrapyard? I'll work there for a little bit, scrap some stuff, sell it, do some repairs. I like that. That actually does sound kind of fun. Now, that's like relaxing, tedious work, right? Is that going to be always, kind of complemented by potential PvP in Pyro? I don't know. Again, this is an MMO, right? So a lot of it's going to depend on the player base and what they're doing and where they're going and where the incentive is. From what I'm seeing right now, I'm not 100% convinced that the incentive for pirates is going to be to pirate or, come after the people that are collecting RMC with their multi-tool. So I'm curious to see where the money ends up being in Pyro.
Another piece of non-combat gameplay at scrapyards might be repairing machinery. We have a system which uses the resource network and engages it in missions. So you will be able to, for example, if there's a broken piece of machinery, you'll be able to find a working piece of machinery, rip components and fuses and parts out of that, apply it to the broken one, and make that run instead. But of course, you've broken the first machine by doing that.
Without any landing zones in the Pyro star system, we're using scrapyards to be able to help service your ships so that you can navigate to other locations on the planet, as well as get back up into space as well.
That looked fantastic. That looked absolutely fantastic.
But the largest concentration of player activity is going to be happening at the trade posts. The trade posts are where the player is going to be dealing with trade and commodity.
Okay, I just want to mention this I don't know if this is them doing renders or if this looks too good. Am I the only one thinking this? Like, these last few scenes we've seen look way better and more detailed than what we've seen so far. Like, kind of making me think, wait, are they building this in the final version or whatever most updated version of Star Engine is, including all the good stuff like Maelstrom and ray tracing and all that? Or what is this? It looks great. The ICO is good, awesome. How you doing, RFC? Welcome in. All right, let's keep going because these scenes do look fantastic, and I'm very curious now.
Organizing themselves between different groups in order to purchase different food, water, ship weapons, ship components, armor, grenades, med pens, whatever, you name it, it can be found and sold here.
They focus quite heavily on hauling, delivery, and shuttling goods around.
Trader posts are organized by several different factions within the Pyro star system. At these different locations, you might find different inventory, different perks, different goods. So if you're aligned with Citizens for Prosperity, you might visit locations such as Jackson Swap on Pyro 2 or Conard View on Pyro 6. Conard View is in a very cold location that's very inhospitable, but people still need to be able to service and trade and do things around this planet. You can find different goods, different resources there, all being sold at this location. As Conard View is sheltered within a crater, it is also a safer location away from other headhunter gangs nearby, so you've got fewer people competing for your wares or trying to pirate from you either. Jackson Swamp is sheltered between these two different cliff bluffs, offering them lots of protection. And through there we went for a spaghetti western style main thoroughfare with lots of...
That's awesome. This style right here with like the desert, this looks super cool.
Different landing pads around, and because it's well established, it's got some nice defensive measures so that it can't be immediately attacked by any rogue factions within Pyro.
We see in Jackson Swap, it's a hard environment that these people live in. It's not an easy living.
Visually, it echoes like the rest of the sort of art style that we call the sort of frontier art style.
If we look at the buildings, we see that there's a lot of stucco elements, there's a lot of makeshift little knickknacks that people have gathered from around the Pyro system.
That is like a true Star Wars inspired aesthetic. Like, I mean, this screams Lucas-inspired sets. I mean, it's really cool. It's actually, this looks way better than what a lot of current Star Wars is doing.
It's a mixture of that hard scrabble life and people trying to make the best of what they have and repairing things over and over again and like replacing things that break.
You can see that the way that people are living there, it's very makeshift. Rooms were built to have a certain purpose, but have lost that purpose many years ago.
There's still that sort of decorative, artisanal, craftsman-like elements in there as well, with the rough weave rugs and things like that. So we're trying to really like push that homesteading vibe, in complete opposition to things like the space stations and, you know, Microtech, which up to now has been this very corporate, lots of metal, lots of angles, lots of edges, lots of sci-fi. This is supposed to soften off all those corners.
You as a player can land whatever size ship you have, purchase whatever size ship components and ship weapons you might want to have. You can
Okay, I'm really liking all of this, but so far this is really just a show and tell of what we're going to see in Pyro. I mean, the only new things we're seeing are assets and locations. I mean, we did learn about some, I guess we can call it gameplay of, you know, doing the farming loop or the scrapping loop or repair, maintenance stuff. That's cool. But I don't know, I guess I thought they were going to talk more about like player interaction. Show and tell of 4.0 with an unknown delivery date, right? That's kind of what it feels like. It's like, okay, what's next? Next week, are we going to get a lore episode on what's coming in Pyro? You know what I mean, Jug? Like, is it like their build up to look at all the cool things that'll come out eventually? And also, I'm now convinced that a couple ISCs in the last month and a half were not planned and were pushed out because they didn't have 324 ready. I don't think we're there yet with Pyro, but this is a lot of look at this stuff.
visit the local warehouse or order any potential things that you might need to have, commodities, food, etc. Where anybody needs to be able to get something, purchase it, collect it. This is where all the players are going to be collecting. But maybe you align yourself with headhunters and you visit locations like Gone of Steel and Golden Riviera. Gone of Steel is
fantastic.
a smaller outlaw trade post perched in Pyro 4's massive crater. It's there as a stopgap between Pyro 3 and Pyro 6 because there is not much landmass around Pyro 5. Pyro 5 is a gas giant, and yet you need to have a midway drop-off to get from Pyro 3 over to Pyro 6 on the far side because Pyro's star system is far larger than Stanton. Golden Riviera is one of those sleazy towns which is just full of seedy people, absolutely taken over by the headhunters. They've butchered everything, they've changed how they want things to work. Trade posts are possibly selling slave pods and find other illegal goods, but it's just a central hub of like sleaziness.
Don't judge them.
It is still built out of this minimal.
Right? Are we gonna get space casinos like spaghetti western dusty planet space casinos? I would be so down for that. I would be super down for that. I would be incredibly excited for that. But this is cool. The more I watch this episode of ISC, the more I'm kind of getting like, this may sound ridiculous, but like Fallout New Vegas vibes in space. I mean, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. This is really cool. Or maybe finally like the Outer Rim and Star Wars feel. And when we're there with all the stuff coming out right now about Star Wars Outlaws, this might be the better Outlaws. So let's see.
Things that are laying around. It's very a hodgepodge of different things that come together. What makes Golden Riviera different is that now a tornado just went through the entire place. It is absolute chaos. Bits and bobs are laying around. Things have rusted, and you will find mattresses of where people have been sleeping in the weirdest corners. We can see that the people that have been living in the space have really outlived this location a little bit.
The idea is that these are once prosperous outposts that have since been like basically home invaded by the bad guys and
Squatters.
taken over completely. So we use a lot of more like fire and lots of spiked kind of like cladding and rusty metal elements, just to give that kind of, I hesitate to say Mad Max, but kind of that more apocalyptic vibe, I suppose.
Jackson Swap, even though it is very improvised, it has a certain structure underneath it. And Golden Riviera, this structure is nearly gone. It is really chaos, anarchy that this place really embodies.
Yes, this helmet, give me. I would like now, please. Maybe these glasses too, but definitely this helmet. Please give me.
The players coming to our locations should feel like they are encountering a whole new frontier where people feel a little bit on edge and they're curious about you, but they're also hesitant to meet you at the same time. There is no law, there is no jurisdiction, there is no protection. There is just you and people trying to get by and live their lives.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully that there's a whole lot more to Pyro than just being a jerk and destroying everything you see and touch. That while all the systemic gameplay systems of Stanton can be found there, Pyro arrives with a few new ones of its own. And that at launch, there are two primary factions that currently dominate much of Pyro's planetside. And your choice of allegiance will determine much about where you'll go and what you'll do with your time there. And if you were asking yourself, hey, do these two factions ever fight? Well, I'd say come back in 2 weeks to see not only how much they don't like each other, but how they both have to contend with the ongoing presence of Xenothreat as their neighbors. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you. And we'll see you all here next week with a special Ship Showdown showcase look back at the work of superstar Gavin Rothery. He's so good.
Okay. I just really want to quickly talk about, why did Jared make that comment about going around destroying everything and just being a jerk? Is there something I missed that recently happened in the verse? Because that feels definitely targeted at PvPers, or maybe more targeted at griefers. Did I miss something? That felt maybe like a little bit too much of a strong jab. I don't know. It could just be me. But I will say this was cool. But yeah, I mean, this is all now stuff leading us into an eventual release of Pyro. And you know how we were all kind of getting bored of talking about cargo for an entire month? Well, guess what, everybody? I feel like we're headed in that direction again, except we're going to be talking Pyro for the next month and a half, 2 months, because I don't see this coming out before the end of September. That's a month and a half. There's no way Pyro comes out in a month and a half. Everyone believes Pyro is just going to be a massive griefer zone. I guess some people do think that. I think Jared just commenting on expectations. Yeah, I mean, I expect, and that's what I was trying to comment on earlier, because like they didn't really show a ton of stuff, right? At least in this episode, where we're convinced we're going to make a lot of money. I mean, that all looks like kind of little things to do here and there. That looks like almost kind of like starter stuff. You know, like I don't expect after 1,000 hours in a stable 1.0 to still be heading to the freaking scrapyard and grab an RMC, even if my characters died and had to pass it on to niece or nephew, right? Or however they do the system for its transition. I think he said that because while Stanton has law and security in place, Pyro has none unless Pyro provides it themselves. I don't think Pyro necessarily provides it. And that was one of the things I was thinking about when we saw the repair stations, right? Those big, you know, kind of Tatooine looking bays in the middle of an outpost, is there seems to not even be any security there, which seems a little bit odd. A facility like that would want to protect its customers because that's good business. So I'm very curious on how they're going to do certain that stuff. It was really interesting that he noted at the end that what you choose or who you choose in terms of faction to ally yourself with is going to have a lot of impact on the places you go to and this type of stuff you do. Well, let's be honest. The type of stuff you do will probably be similar for both, with some differences here and there sprinkled in. But overall, this was all pretty interesting. But then again, now I'm just kind of have that dreadful thought of, is this going to be a lot of 2 months of just essentially videos on lore and look at these cool new things that's coming soon, TM? And that's, I think, what gets everybody, because objectively, what they're showing us, I think, is cool. It's awesome. Some of these scenes looked absolutely fantastic. And I don't know. I'm curious to see kind of where this all goes in the end. No one on share is not sure it was the same game we played. Exactly. That's where I'm like, some of those scenes looked way too good. Was that CGI'd? Was that done in Unreal Engine 5? Which I've been teaching myself how to use. That's kind of hard. I mean, it's simple, yet I guess right now I'm showing my how crap of an artist I am. No one on shares. Yeah, they do. Well, I don't know. So let's see. Were there any funnies? I'm always so disappointed when we don't get any funnies. I need my funnies. Give me my funnies. All right. So in summary, we learned a lot of cool stuff about Pyro. And well, I mean, cool stuff. I mean, we saw a lot of new locations. We saw a lot of the aesthetics we're going to get. We saw some really cool looking ones, in my opinion. I'm really looking forward to the spaghetti western places. Those look absolutely terrific. I think it'll be kind of cool to see kind of some of the little things you can do in Pyro. I'm very curious how things are going to play out a bit with Pyro and the two factions. I think it was really cool that we learned that choosing one faction is serious or over the other is seriously going to affect what you can and can't do in Pyro. Another thing is they did say that Pyro is a lot bigger than Stanton, and that we've known for a while, but I mean, some of the ships already have a hard time getting across Stanton. What's it going to be like getting across Pyro in like a Pisces or a Hornet Mark II or Mark 1 or I feel like there's either going to be a lot more people flying around with, Carracks, 600 eyes maybe, although not enough firepower. Carracks, Connies, feel like we're going to see a lot of those. Corsairs, I feel like Pyro is going to be full of that, mostly because of distance and then needing a lot of firepower. I think it'll also be a good place for heavy fighters since they have range, but unless you're specifically very close to an area or you have an outpost not far where you can spawn stuff, I don't see people going too much for smaller ships around Pyro. And I may be wrong. And I know somebody, I think, who was it? Was it RFC or who was it that was talking about going around? It was Scott talking about going around in their Rambler and just kind of exploring. But he made a good point. You're going to need that extra fuel just to get around. So Caterpillar does not sound like a very good Pyro ship. Carrack will be a good one. C2, A2, I think are going to continue to be some of the top dogs, but it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes. I haven't really seen yet where the major money is going to be unless the extraction zones are really going to be where it's at, which would make sense and I would be all for. Maybe they need the Starfarer to work. They definitely need the Starfarer to work. That is a thing. Absolutely. It should be working. Be nice if they got that working. With that, everybody, I want to say thank you so much. If you liked what you saw, consider leaving a like and subscribe. If you didn't, well, thank you for hanging out for so long and listening to what I had to say. With that, let's go ahead and switch on over to the marbles.